have this story of the Son of God coming to earth as a baby, a story unbelievable, unimaginable, a crazy sacrifice. And then we hear very little of Jesus for about 30 years. We have one cute story about him as a 12-year-old, and then we hear nothing of him. We just know that he obeyed his parents. He was his son. And then he goes to the Jordan. When he's 30 years old, he goes to the Jordan to be baptized by his cousin. And we have this amazing scene. I so wish I could see this play out, right? But what we have is the heavens ripping open, and God, the God of the universe, the God that spoke into being the universe that we live on, that God speaking with that voice, that power, speaking over Jesus, saying, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." And Jesus is baptized, and the Spirit also is in the picture as well. Comes down, descends on Jesus in bodily form. And from there, Jesus is taken, led into the desert by the Spirit. Just him and his Father in the desert. And so I wonder about that time, what that time was like for Jesus, to go from almost like the top of the universe to nothing in the desert. I mean, 1 minute he's there under a ripped open heaven, the Spirit on him in the Jordan River, and the next minute he's in the desert, in the heat, in the hunger, in the pain of going 40 days without food. He goes from the heights to the depths, and I wonder why God did that. And then there at his physically at his weakest, 40 days, the Bible says he was hungry. You reckon? You reckon he was hungry after 40 days? So Jesus, weak, hungry, at his lowest, has Satan, the tempter, come to him at that time. And Satan gave it his best shot to topple the Son of God. But it's interesting because what happens is he goes from being declared Son of God, being declared loved by God, approved by God, to the desert where Satan attacks him. And you know what Satan attacks? He attacks his identity. He attacks those things that God said to him. Those things that God declared over Jesus are then attacked by Satan. And so Satan comes to him and says, if you really are the Son of God, you'll turn these rocks into bread. And Jesus doesn't fall for that one. So he goes to the next one. He says, if you are the Son of God, and he tempts him again. And he also goes on to tempt him the third time. But the very things that were said to him by God, Satan tried to come and rob those things from Jesus at the very beginning.
So what must it have been like to be in the desert with nobody around you, no food, no help, nothing or no one to turn to? In these times where the enemy is like, well, I'm going to try this way. No, I'm going to try this way. What must that have been like for Jesus? To have only his Father to communicate with. What is it like to be in the desert for 40 days? That's longer than a month. 40 days. To feel so alone and so thirsty, so hungry, weak, where your muscles are shaking, where you're probably delirious, probably not knowing which way is north, south, east, or west. What's going to happen next? Only your Father to listen to and to communicate with and to take instruction from. I wonder what would be left after 40 days in the desert. The things that we cling to, the ways that we turn to other things for our identity, our Facebook, our sports, our talents, our art, our relationships with people, the things that make up who we are, how we look. 40 days in the desert is going to ravage, no matter how you look, how good you look today, 40 days in the desert is going to ravage that. And what would it be like to be at the very end of yourself? Everything has melted away. Everything that you could cling to is gone in that way that where Jesus was at just him and his Father. So all the things that make up our identity, the things that are who we say we are, they're gone. Can we live out of who our Father says we are? Is that enough for us? Is it enough for our identity to be found in Jesus?